All right, good evening, everyone. Last week I was watching Steve Gibson's Security Now. I do that every week, and he posted up a site called sslabs.com that allows you to check out the strength of the if a site has an HTTPS like Facebook, or in my case, I checked out my TD Bank, TDCanadaBank.com, or in this case it was EasyWeb.com, just out of curiosity to see what their strength was. And much to my horror, it got a big fat F. So, in a side of caution, I sent him a message on Twitter asking him, should I be worried about it? And so I told him I saw a few things I didn't like in there. He said, well, it looks like either the people that set it up didn't know how to set it up or didn't care. I said, okay, thank you. I forwarded a message on Twitter using TD Bank's hashtag. They said, oh, thank you, we'll pass it off to our web admins, which I'm basically assuming means so yeah, I was listening to a show today, and lo and behold, guess what the part of the topic was about? It was worse than I thought. Enjoy.
One listener was very worried because he put the address of his bank, which is TD Canada Trust, and this was easywebsoc.td.com, into SSL Labs, and received a grade for his bank's SSL security of F. It got an F. You can get an E, by the way, which is somewhere between D and F. This got his bank an F, and so he wrote saying, oh my God, should I worry? So I wanted to create a little bit of context for this, a little more context. I went back to sslabs.com, and Leo, if you go there, you could use the link that's in my show notes if you wanted to, and that brings up the test for this TD Canada Trust Bank. It summarizes all of its findings in 4 categories. The quality and strength of your certificate, that is the certificate that secure server is offering, the nature of the protocols that it supports.
That's a pretty big red F.
It leaves, yeah, you can understand why people might be a little concerned if their bank is getting an F.
Boy.
The key exchange strength and the cipher suite strength. So this TD Canada Trust got 100 on their certificate. So it's a big green bar that goes all the way. They got a 0 on protocol support, and that earned them an instant F.
They're using SSL 2.0.
Yes. And it's not that they don't offer more, but they offer it.
They need to turn this off.
Correct. And so that's what did it to them. That SSL version 2.0 earned them an instant F. There's no way to get better.
So they're vulnerable to Beast is the problem.
Well, actually, no. That's a different problem.
Oh.
SSL 2.0 is just no longer recommendable.
Right.
And remember that from our discussions about the way the handshake goes, the client, which is in this case a user, their platform, their Windows, their Android, their iOS, their Mac, whatever, Linux, Unix, their platform sends to the server a list of ciphers and cipher suites that they understand. So it's like, here's a menu, a bunch of things that we understand. So it's up to the server then to choose what it wants. And so the server looks at its list and compares it, the list of things it knows about, the different ways to securely interact in detail, and finds arguably the best one, whatever that means, and we'll talk about that in a second because that's where Beast comes in, finds the best one that it chooses from among what the client has said it understands. Now, what this means is that if you had a man in the middle, the man in the middle could intercept the client's initial outgoing connection and hold on to it for a second, then turn around and only offer SSL version 2.0 to the server. Now, my server will say, sorry, if all you've got is SSL 2.0, we can't talk. And so a contemporary, well-configured web server today,
like my Bank of America, A+.
Oh, yay.
Yay.
Good. Yes.
I had to check it after that.
A well-configured server will not agree to accept a version 2.0 SSL connection. It just says, sorry, if that's all you got, we can't talk. Unfortunately, TD Canada Trust does accept it. So it's this man-in-the-middle vulnerability. It's the idea that somebody in the middle could downgrade the security the client is actually offering to a level that is so insecure that then there are other exploits which can be used against it. So
Chase,
that's what,
by the way,
an F.
Chase.com, C.
Yeah.
Key exchange was red. Cipher strength was yellow. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So the other things that are happening is that in
this
protocol,
I like running this. I know this is awesome.
It's wonderful. Yeah. So they remember that the problem with Beast, the BEAST, the browser, whatever it was that it stands for, but it's our guys that were on the beach. They realized that any cipher block chaining protocol where the residual from the end of one block is fed into the beginning of the next, and that is true up to TLS 1.1. So both SSL 2.0, which is already bad for different reasons, but also SSL version 3.0 and TLS version 1.0, which is essentially the same as SSL version 3.0, they all have their cipher block chaining protocols chaining across the blocks that are being sent. That is across packets of blocks. And it's that inter-packet chain that creates a vulnerability which can be exploited by this Beast attack. So what's happened again is that when a client offers a bunch of protocols, the traditional wisdom was, oh, cipher block chaining and fancy ciphers like AES 256, for example, those are going to be better than RC4, because RC4 is just a pseudo-random stream generator. It doesn't use chaining. And so normally servers put their CBC-based fancy new ciphers first. And so that's the other thing that SSL Labs tests is essentially it gives the server different it teases them with different sets of protocols to see which ones the server chooses. And unfortunately, again, this TD Canada Trust has its CBC ciphers taking priority over the older RC4-based cipher. And once again, it loses points because that means it's vulnerable to the Beast attack, because it will happily use this interlocking packet weakened cipher protocol rather than not. And lastly, under the cipher strength category, it only got a 60 out of 100 because it's still supporting the weakest cipher key lengths ever. It's got a whole bunch of 40-bit key lengths and some 56-bit key lengths, and those are just no longer strong enough. You just can't, we were talking the other day about the 64-bit key, which I can't remember who. It was a service that was saying that, oh, well, because of export restrictions, we're just using a 64-bit key and not anything higher.
Evernote.
But that's right, Evernote.
Yeah.
But here, this is 40 and 56 bits. So there's just no reason to offer these weaker ciphers.
No.
And the server identifies itself as IBM HTTP server.
What?
And it's deployed by Akamai Technologies.com. So this is a major cloud deployment IBM server that is just sort of default configured. And this is what you get if you just install the software and don't do any tweaking. I imagine
that's it, of course.
Yes. Yeah, it just gives you everything. Here's everything.
But you got to think a bank has some pretty high qualified, heavy-duty experts, security.
Well, I think
guys.
What they've done is they've subbed this out. They've said, okay, we know about charging people.
Right,
we don't know about security. And Akamai says, oh, I bet you they've got gold seals and all kinds of junk all over their website talking about how wonderful their security is. But it's not. It's just, unfortunately, not obviously here. They got an F at the moment. So, I mean, no, this is not going to hurt TD Canada Trust. I mean, in terms of like their reputation, because only people who listen to this podcast know about, the details of their way they're connected. But if a bad guy was really, really intent on exploiting their customers, it's much more possible to do so with a connection of this low grade than not. So anyway, that's what that's all about.
And who knows who to blame? I mean, I wouldn't be rushed to blame Akamai. It may be that when you set up your server at Akamai, or you have check boxes, and whoever was doing TD Ameritrade said, we should make it as flexible as possible. Let's make sure we support everything, and checked all the boxes. Who knows how this happened? I wouldn't blame anybody. A surprisingly large number of banks are pretty good, though. Wells Fargo, straight A's.
Nice.
Yeah. Chase, kind of some middle-of-the-road stuff. B of A, A's. So just, this is probably a worthwhile thing for people to run. SSLLabs.com. They have a site test right there.
And if you find out that your bank is rated low,
complain.
By all means, send a note. Yeah, complain. Yeah. Send a note to some web admin somewhere and say, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
Are you sleeping well at night?
Yeah.